Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, South Africa's anti-corruption chief is mired further in scandal after High Court judges are scathing in their latest ruling against her. There are growing calls for public protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane to step down. Also in Sudan, protesters launch a legal petition to open investigations into almost a dozen people who went missing during June's fatal crackdown on a sit-in. The violence has cast a shadow on political efforts to move on from recent instability under the ruling TMC that took over after the ousting of Omar al-Bashir in April. And the Kenyan government issues birth certificates to 600 children from the Shona community. Many have long been stateless after arriving in the country in the 1960s and have been living without access to basic rights. But first, South Africa's anti-corruption chief is mired further in scandal after High Court judges were scathing in their latest ruling against her. There have been growing calls for public protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane to step down. Her critics believe that her investigations have repeatedly targeted President Cyril Ramaphosa and his allies because of political bias. On Thursday, judges found that Ramaphosa did not have to comply with an order from Mkhwebane to discipline his public enterprises minister, Pravin Gordhan. Gordhan is still appealing against some of Mkhwebane's earlier findings, and judges have said that her reasoning has been mind-boggling. Well, Aisha Ishmael joins us now with more. Aisha, so it's not the first time that judges have struck down one of Mkhwebane's orders. Why have they been so harsh on her?
Georgia, I don't think it's a question of the judges being harsh on the public protector. I think it's a question of what is right in law. And the judges have found that on a number of occasions, the public protector has erred in her decisions. She's made irrational decisions, and they've used words like mind-boggling and irrational. So this, as you correctly point out, it's not the first time, and it is a question of what is right in law, and there have been mounting calls for the public protector to either step down or for President Cyril Ramaphosa to remove her, and there are questions being asked by opposition parties and some civil society organizations saying that can this woman hold this high office? Is she competent to hold this office?
So, I mean, she's been accused of being politically motivated. Why would she be so set on going after Ramaphosa?
Well, you will remember and recall that the public protector, this particular one, was appointed by former President Jacob Zuma. She was the last public protector to be appointed by him. And within Cyril Ramaphosa's government, the ANC, there are factions, and there is still a faction loyal to former President Jacob Zuma. And the allegation is that the public protector is biased. She's loyal to the Zuma faction, and this will seriously hamper President Cyril Ramaphosa's attempts to root out corrupt officials and to hold them accountable. Because at the end of the day, the public protector will have to investigate these people. And if she is seen to be biased, there is no way that corrupt officials will be held accountable.
Thanks very much. Aisha Ishmael there for us in Cape Town. Well, Burundi said that the World Health Organization's belief that malaria in the country has reached epidemic proportions is an overstatement. The report found that there have been 5 million cases this year alone, that more than 1,800 people have died. Meanwhile, Bujumbura claims that those numbers are actually down on those of 2017 and says that there have only been 4.3 million recorded cases and 1,400 deaths in 2019. The UN's warned that either way, Bujumbura is not treating the current outbreak seriously enough and that the response is not being effective. In Sudan, protesters have launched a legal petition to open investigations into 11 people who went missing during a fatal crackdown on demonstrators in June. 127 people were killed at the time. The violence has cast a shadow over political efforts to move on from recent instability. Despite a deal to pave the way to a transitional government being signed last week, the US has said that it is still not ready to remove Sudan from the state-sponsored terrorism list. Nicola Shona tells us more.
In Sudan, no one has forgotten the crackdown on the protest movement on June the 3rd. According to doctors close to the demonstrators, at least 127 people were killed. Now lawyers say that legal proceedings have been filed as some protesters have gone missing since that day.
According to the statistics we now have, initially 100 people were missing, but later we found 40 of them in hospitals. 3 others have been confirmed dead, and legal proceedings have been filed in 11 cases.
On Sunday, Sudan's military rulers and the main opposition coalition signed a constitutional declaration. It will pave the way for a transitional government following the overthrow of Omar al-Bashir in April. But US officials visiting Khartoum remain cautious. Washington is not yet ready to remove Sudan from the state sponsors of terrorism list.
The fact is that Sudan remains designated as a state sponsor. That remains in effect. There are a number of things we're looking forward to engaging in a civilian-led government. The issues that before us include the promotion of human rights and religious freedom. Counterterrorism efforts are important as well.
The fact that Sudan is designated as a sponsor of terrorism means it is not eligible for debt relief and financing from lenders like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank.
Well, the UN reckons that Central African Republic may be getting safer. New figures show a sharp drop in the number of attacks and human rights abuses since last year. The head of human rights for the UN mission in the country is still being cautious, though. However, he has said that February's peace deal between the government and 14 armed groups appear to have allowed for a relative respite. Central African Republic has been in conflict since 2013, when mainly Muslim rebels ousted the former president, prompting reprisals from mostly Christian militia. And thousands of people from the Shona community arrived in Kenya from Zimbabwe back in the 1960s. At the time, they were registered as British subjects, but many who later failed to register as Kenyan became stateless. Well, the government's now gone some way to offer protection to the community by issuing birth certificates for 600 children.
These birth certificates mean a lot to members of the Shona community in Kenya. Their parents came here from Zimbabwe in the 1960s. After Kenya became independent in 1963, they had a 2-year window to register as Kenyans. Many missed it and became stateless. For the first time, 600 Shona children are receiving birth certificates in Kenya.
I kept hoping, but I never imagined this day would have come, and that we would be as happy as we are today. A big step has been made here.
Emma was born in 1986 without a birth certificate. Access to education was always a struggle. She stayed home and got married as a teenager.
Things will change with this piece of paper. It will be easier for the community members to move to different places, and they can make a life for themselves.
Without proof of nationality, the Shona could not travel, own property, or be formally employed.
You can't have the development goals that you aim for if pockets of the population are disabled from aspiring to those goals because of the fact that they can't access nationality.
The birth certificates are part of a move to end statelessness for 3,500 Shona. In all, an estimated 18,500 stateless people currently live in Kenya.
Well, the Muslim holiday of Eid al-Adha is set for this weekend, August the 11th. Since it falls in summer this year, many Tunisians visiting home are extending their stay to celebrate with family. But since the revolution, the price of plane tickets between Tunisia and France have just kept rising, and that's putting Tunisians living abroad off from visiting their homeland. Our correspondents tell us more.
Every year, many Tunisians living abroad head back to Zarzis to enjoy the beach and visit family. Nowadays, flights from France can cost a whopping 700 euros. Abdel Wahab has 5 children and says it's getting harder to fund family holidays.
Our holidays cost too much. Usually you can tell by looking at the beach. Before the revolution, it was full. Everyone came back. They had the means. because tickets were around 300 euros. Today they're around 600 euros. That's double the price. Some people can't afford that.
This year, Abdel Wahab and his family came by boat and car. Before, coming by plane would have been cheaper. Over the past 10 years, the number of Tunisians returning for the summer has dropped from 1 million to 600,000. That's costing Tunisian holiday locations vital revenue.
It's a real shame that Tunisians from abroad aren't being targeted as tourists. They bring the most foreign currency into the country, more than 2 billion euros, without counting what they spend on the black market. This 3-month summer period is a good case study. It shows that in Tunisia the government isn't doing enough in terms of economic integration of expat Tunisians.
In a bid to tempt back more of the Tunisian diaspora, the national carrier Tunisair and the government started offering special deals at the beginning of June. But Tunisair is currently struggling to supply extra seats for the deals.
In a bid to tempt back more of the Tunisian diaspora, the national carrier Tunisair and the government started offering special offers at the beginning of June. But Tunisair is currently struggling to supply extra seats for the deals.
More than 700,000 people of Tunisian origin live in France. For the upcoming Muslim holiday of Eid, many did not pick Tunisia as a holiday destination.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Take care.